If you're in Seattle, and you need to buy or sell a home, we'll be right there for you. Because we're the realtors that you can trust. So go to ronanddonsitdown.com.
You're listening to The Ron and Don Show on the Ron and Don Radio Network.
Hey, you guys, what's going on? And welcome to another edition of the Ron and Don Show. And we are back live in the Les Schwab studio.
What is up, Ron and Don Nation?
Hey, coming up on the Ron and Don Show, you ever wonder why they dim the lights in the cabin, especially you're about to fall asleep, the plane's about to land, and all of a sudden, even on an overnight flight where it's still dark outside, they turn all the lights up and then they dim them and they wake you up and it's a real bummer. I guess there's a reason for doing that. And also, why do flight attendants actually sit on their hands? And should we be sitting on our hands when the plane is taken off? Ron has some answers on that. Also, if you want to remember everything, there's a way to do that. We'll talk about that, especially as we get older and we think about dementia, or if you see a parent or a grandparent that suffers from dementia, you're like, man, I do not want that to happen to me. The cool thing, though, about dementia is you don't know what's happening to you. It's happening to other people. So that's the way I try to look at it. Before we get to that, though, let's get to this. Let's talk about this company called Waymo. Do you remember we talked about Waymo a couple weeks ago? Because this company right now has way more problems than they had a couple weeks ago. So what is Waymo? And this was happening in San Francisco, right?
No, it was in, well, they have it in San Francisco, but the particular story we're talking
No. We're just resetting.
Yeah.
We're resetting the San Francisco story because then we have to talk about what happened in San Diego, which is brand new information on the Ron and Don Show.
So in there was a situation where Waymo's a self-driving car.
Yep.
And if you see them, most of them are in Southern California. They're white electric vehicles, and they have all kinds of gadgetry strapped onto the outside.
They got way more gadgets on their car than you have on your car. I'll tell you that right now. Way more gadgets.
And things that are spinning and gyroscopic stuff and like all these cameras mounted everywhere. And so you summon it like you would an Uber. You get a Waymo and jump in the back, and it drives you to your destination with no person in the front seat. And so a lot of people get way more freaked out about that.
Yeah.
Now, as part of their protocol, what they do is they go back to like a service center and hook themselves up to a charging station. And whenever the Waymo car comes into the yard and it has to back up to get into the spot, a backup beep goes off.
Yep.
And so anytime the vehicle, and this is part of the regulations in California for all electric vehicles, if you've ever heard one going by in a parking lot, it makes this like whining noise at low speeds so that people can hear the car. And then when it backs up, it beeps as it backs up. And so the only problem was Waymo built their recharging facility. They want it to be as central as possible to the people that use the Waymos. So it's adjacent to a residential neighborhood. And 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, these cars are being summoned to go out and pick people up and drive them around. So cars are constantly coming in and backing up and going beep, beep, beep into the parking spaces. And it's driving the people that live around this place absolutely insane.
Yeah, this happened in San Francisco, as you mentioned, Santa Monica, in LA, where we saw something. People want to call those riots. I wouldn't exactly call those riots, but whatever it is that we saw, I guess if you're burning a car, that could be considered a riot. And that was one of the cars that was getting burned in Los Angeles.
They summoned like 4 Waymo cars in Los Angeles, and they were Waymo burnt.
Yeah. So now the update is they're having way more problems in San Diego now, right?
Yeah, same thing. It's the beeping up of the car. So what they've decided, here's what they try to do. And tell me if you'd be satisfied with this if you live next to a Waymo charging station. One is they brought out some nerds with audio meters, and they said, we are technically under the decibel level
that's not gonna work.
Allowed in neighborhoods.
Right.
And so you can imagine that the people in the neighborhood were like,
yeah,
don't care. It's still annoying. Yeah. So that was number one. Number two, they said, what if we plant some bushes between us and your house, because that'll filter out some of the noise. And they're like, that's Waymo annoying.
Yeah.
Because now that's not going to work.
not gonna
And
work.
then the third one is they were like, well, is there a way that we can create this system where the cars don't have to back up?
Yeah.
Because we're not going to change California law. The beeps go away. So they're saying maybe we built it more like a tunnel where the car comes in, gets charged, and never goes in reverse.
Yeah.
And then goes out the other side. So they're trying to figure that out.
Like
And
you
then-
see at a Hertz when you're dropping your car off sometimes at an airport.
Yeah, and then they're like, the final thing is to try and soundproof the neighbors' apartments for them.
Yeah.
So say, we'll come over and soundproof your building for you. None of these solutions seem to satisfy the people there because it's just annoying that it happens all the time.
I wonder what we're all going to get to do in the future, because part of our life and feeling purpose is the work that we do, or sometimes going through struggle. You hear Tom Brady talk about all the time, winning all those Super Bowls, but the struggle it took to get there, almost being drafted last in the NFL draft, which kind of gave him that chip on his shoulder and that burning desire to kind of go win. And he always says, I learn more from failure. I learn more from losing. I said, when you think about Super Bowls, do you think about the winning or the losing? And he thinks about the losing. He thinks about were the games he didn't perform well in, because they went to 10 or 11, right? And they won 7, I think. He said, he says, I think way more about losing than winning. And the thing is, in the future, because now we have Elon Musk, and it looks like what's going to save his company is not the Cybertruck, but these autonomous taxis, right? These robo-taxis. And he's going to start rolling these out along with, and they already have, some robo-trucks out there. My son's getting ready to go to driving school, and in the future, will you even go to driving school, right? And the fun for me, I still like driving a car.
I like driving as well.
Yeah, so I don't want a robot to drive me around. I don't.
Not in rush hour in Seattle when all the bridges are closed, but other than that, I like driving.
Yeah, it just if we're not going to have work to do, I was reading 3 guys this morning that said in the next 5 years they're going to automate every job in the world, which I think is going to be very interesting. And there are going to be lots of jobs to get automated. You look at Microsoft this morning, laying off thousands of people. That have a great effect here in the great Pacific Northwest. And they're laying off thousands of people because they say they want to continue to double down on AI.
AI,
Yeah. So that'll be really interesting in the future. If you don't have a job, what are you going to do to make a living? And then do you really just want to get in a car and have a robot drive you around and have a robot go shopping for you? We already live pretty casual lives, as any room in our house is made to either lay down or sit down, and the human body is not supposed to do that. So the human body was made to move, to hunt, to gather, and to be outdoors. So anyway, hey, you guys, don't go anywhere. We'll see you on the other side of this.
I thought you were going to say we have way more left to come.
Hey, you guys, what's going on? It is Ron and Don for Les Schwab Tires. It's been about a month now since we got our new Les Schwab tires. And in fact, I went to Les Schwab right here in Ballard. I talked to Evan, and Evan came out and he said, you guys have this brand new, well, it's new to us. It's a 2002 Eurovan that we actually use for the Ron and Don show. And he said, you know what? That's a little heavier than most vans. In fact, let me do this and spend some time and special order you a very special Les Schwab tire with America's best tire warranty. You also get the great 60-day satisfaction. That's guaranteed. And if the tires don't feel right, you can bring them back within 60 days, no hassle. And here's the cool thing. I went on a test drive with a Volkswagen technician the other day who's been fixing Eurovans for the last, 30 years. And when we got in the van, he has a Eurovan himself, and he's been in hundreds of them. He said, this is the best riding Eurovan I have ever been in. He said, where'd you get these tires? I said, I got these tires. We got these tires for our business from Les Schwab Tire, of course.
Yeah, and that 60-day satisfaction guarantee gives you peace of mind. Other places charge you extra, but at Les Schwab, they're America's best tire warranty. That is included with every set of tires. It's one more way they truly stand behind what they sell. That's why you get more from less. Visit your Les Schwab store today or book an appointment at leschwab.com. That's leschwab.com.
If you have a friend that is ready to start their real estate journey, send them to ronanddonsitdown.com.
All right, you guys, welcome back to the Ron and Don Show. I think as I get older, I think about cognitive impairment. I've seen some of that in my own family and also in some of my friendships with some men that I'm older with specifically. And it's pretty heartbreaking. And what breaks your heart is, for some people, that long-term reminisce memory is still intact. So you can reminisce with them and they can tell great, rich stories, and it's a lot of fun. But then when you start seeing them struggle with a one-button coffee pot, that's really hard to watch. Or
the one that was like, hey, so we're meeting tomorrow at 1.
Yeah.
And we're meeting tomorrow at 1. And they go, what time are we meeting tomorrow?
Right.
1.
Yeah.
Okay, where are we meeting? We're meeting the same place that we have said 6 times. We're still meeting tomorrow at 1.
Yeah. Pizza's ready. Thank you, Matt. Matt off the mic is making pizza right now in the studio. He actually is trying to fix our clock, so it seems to be the clock. Yeah. Whatever you do keep the tape rolling, because this is a tomfoolery that people pay big money for. This is live on tape radio, you guys.
That's correct.
Yeah, so this is it's live on videotape.
Yeah. So the cognitive thing is very real.
The thing I always thought was great about your dad is he would, every time he would stay over, and I know you just had a visit with him. That guy really was great at doing the crossword puzzles.
Great at crossword puzzles.
And they say...
Very good memory.
Yeah, we just got done reading an article about how you can remember everything as you get older, and part of that is they talk about writing. The other thing that they talk about, and I've been thinking about doing this, like I've always wanted to play the drums, so I'm thinking about getting some drum lessons, and then also some of my guitars that were sitting in the closet, I just restrung those from our band Country Evil. My son's playing one of those guitars, but I'm playing that guitar again, and I'm like, you know what? It would be really cool to go get some guitar lessons and learn to be a better guitarist. They say some of the things that you did in your youth, especially your hobbies, to pick those back up again, and even doing some coaching, some of those other things that I've always loved to do to stay socially involved, to stay connected, to keep using your brain, to keep reading books. You and I are both pretty voracious readers. But what do you think about this article that talked about remembering everything, and also? Well,
it talks about this specific technique, and I've constantly battled with this of, and I don't know the significance of things. So I have a good memory, but it's selective. So like I can meet someone and they tell me their name, and immediately it goes out of my brain. Like immediately. Yet, if you want to know who played bass on a song from 1988 or a lyric to a song,
is this why you made Matt wear a name tag?
Yes,
Matt has a name tag on it. Now it makes sense. And Ron asked me to wear a name tag today. It's a recent thing, but we're all wearing name tags.
So they talk about this. It's a concept called the memory palace. And it goes back to ancient Greece and Rome, where you visualize you're in a room that you're very familiar with, and you assign a memory to specific objects that you know in this physical space. Then you have to create a memory that is dramatic enough that you associate it. So you might say, "Oh, in my living room, there's this plant in the corner." So the plant, I need to remember this guy's name, Don. So I'll come up with a visualization of Don turning into a plant or knocking the plant over, or something happens between you and the plant. And so now that plant in my memory palace is associated with the name Don.
Yeah.
And so it has to be an outlandish enough memory that I won't forget it.
The wackier the better.
Wackier the better. So as you go through the memory palace, each item or each location, you associate it with the thing that you want to remember. And they say that people that master this memory palace skill can remember incredible amounts of information. I haven't trained myself to do that. And like I just met someone yesterday, I cannot remember their name. And it drives me crazy because I need to remember people's names better. Yeah. We had people at Cairo Radio that I worked with for 10 years. I did not know their name because they were on a separate floor than me. Yeah. And I'd only run into them once a month or at a staff meeting, and like I knew him for 10 years. And if you put a gun to my head and said, who is this work colleague you've worked with for 10 years, I would not know their name.
You know who's really good at this is Steve Largent. And I remember we had interviewed Steve Largent, and then I saw him And this is when we worked with the Seahawks before there wasn't ESPN. So Ron and I used to do Coach's Show and the Matt Hasselbeck Show, and they were kind of having their run in '05. And I saw him again, and we were down on the field. So we weren't in a studio, so whatever was happening wasn't associated. And he remembered my name.
Wow.
Yeah. And,
That's incredible.
And so I asked him how he did that. And he explained what you just explained.
Yeah, the memory. Are you okay with names? I think you're better at names than I am. Sometimes.
When I'm not.
Sometimes you'll sometimes put you'll remember a name, but it's not the name for that person.
Right.
And it's just you'll substitute a new
just
name.
Keep throwing them out, and at some point you're going to get it right, Ron. What's kind of interesting is like my kid knows every child's name. He knew every child's name. It blew me away when he was going to elementary school, middle school, and now in high school. I can point to any kid walking out the door and he'll know their name and he could tell you something about them. And like at Lincoln, there's over 1,800 kids there now. And so I'll play the name game with him when we're pulling up, and I'll say, hey, who's that? Or tell me about that kid, or what does that kid do? And it's very rare that he doesn't know their names. And I'm like, that shows that you care. That's pretty. Because sometimes when you don't remember a name, it's because you.
Let me throw this out.
You really don't care.
Your son could be making up names this entire time.
I would love that
to try to impress his dad. Because what are you going to do? How are you going to check? I was like, wow, my kid's a genius. And he's like, they've been making up these names for years.
Oh, I love that. I hope he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're not going to know any different.
He tells me on my deathbed, if I get to be on a deathbed. Hopefully I'm not on a deathbed. But however I go, I hope he's there in the end. So, all right, you guys, more on the other side of this.
Thanks for being a part of the Ron and Don Nation. Subscribe to the Nation News at ronanddonsitdown.com. A behind-the-scenes look at everything Ron and Don.
Hey, Ron, here's what you do. You ask somebody their name, and then when they're answering, then after they answer, you ask them another question, right, that you don't care about. And while they're answering that question, you ignore them, look in their eye, and you think up the memory castle thing for that name, and you use that time to remember their name.
And it works?
Yeah, because you just you go, oh, Don, that reminds me of Dunn or Dung or whatever.
Dunn lumber.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you go, oh, you're made out of wood. And the next time you see him, you imagine that guy made out of wood, and you're like, oh, you're Dunn or Don. Yeah, Don.
Yeah. One of my partners remembers my name because of the character on Gilligan's Island that was played by Don
Knotts?
No. Gilligan's Island. Who played not Ginger?
Oh, Don. Yeah, sure.
D-A-W-N.
Why don't we know her last name? Dawn. 3 DUIs.
Because we don't have a memory palace.
She just passed away. Dawn Wells. I did it. Anyway, one of my partners remembers my name when he first met me. It has something to do with Dawn Wells. How about that?
Whatever it takes.
Interesting. Yeah. Hey, it's that time of year where people are standing up in front of microphones. They're giving commencement speeches. Seinfeld recently gave a pretty good one. Oprah's pretty good at that. Dr. Phil, boy, is he really tracked to the right. But he gives a pretty good bombastic speech. I have to say the two best speeches I ever heard, and there's a story out now about how Steve Jobs, how his speech came together. He gave an incredible commencement speech to Stanford, Ron, when he knew he was dying. And then also, I think Admiral McCraven, who he gave a commencement speech about if there's one thing that you do every day, and I know Ron disagrees with this, it's about getting up and making your bed. And, of course, he led the SEAL teams for years, SEAL teams 2 through 6. And if you ever want to read a great book, you should read his autobiography. It's very, very good. But I loved his commencement speech because he understood the rhythm of giving that speech. And sometimes when people are giving you speeches, they don't understand the rhythm. They don't know you can't be. You got to bring it down. You got to add rhythm. You have to add warmth to it. You have to add connection, that human-to-human connection. And Steve Jobs, what's incredible about his commencement speech is when you read about him or you read about the kind of the father that he was or the partner that he wasn't, he was a jerk, but he kind of acknowledges that in the commencement speech.
He does.
Because at this point, he knows that he's dying.
Well, actually, he had recovered, and in the speech, he says he hopes he lives another 20 years. But the pancreatic cancer, he had just gone through the operation, but he talks about the importance of knowing you're going to die. I would say, real quick, before we dive too deep into the Steve Jobs one, my favorite commencement speech, even better than Steve Jobs. Have you watched the David Foster Wallace one? This Is Water.
Yeah, it's very good.
The David Foster Wallace.
That's very good.
Is probably maybe it's the most profound commencement speech. Steve Jobs gives you 3 stories, and he moves through them in a way that is powerful at the end when he talks about death and knowing that, to be alive is to know that you're going to die. And the other thing that I liked from him, and it's easy because then he turns out to be, one of the most successful technology people in history, but he talks about dropping into college, which I don't know if he came up with that phrase or not, but he says he couldn't afford to go to college, so he dropped out financially. He wasn't getting any credit. But what he did do is he would drop in. And so he would just drop into classes that he was curious about that had nothing to do with anything. And so the example he gives is that there was a calligraphy class at Reed College, and he drops in. He wasn't getting credit. He wasn't even enrolled in the college at that time, but he went to this class, and he's like, that class had a profound impact on me, and I did it just because I was interested in beautiful writing. And he goes, then when him and Wozniak designed the Mac, he took all that stuff about fonts that he learned about in calligraphy class, put it into the Mac, and he's like, that's what set it apart and made it a beautiful machine, is because of this class that I just dropped in on.
Yep.
And for nothing else, and it piqued my curiosity.
Yeah. It's interesting. We talked about this before. When he's dying, and he is on his deathbed, and he's in a house in Palo Alto that he owned for years, and it wasn't a mega mansion or anything, and he always left the doors unlocked. And the story goes that he and Bill Gates, who were friends at one point and then arch rivals, because Steve Jobs felt like Bill Gates was stealing all their stuff, so they legally went after each other a whole bunch. But then do you remember this talk that they had when Gates walks in and Jobs is on his deathbed?
Well, it's interesting if you read the new Bill Gates book, Code Source, I think it's called, he talks about Apple. He needed that Apple account because they were figuring out, they had to write custom versions of BASIC for all these different processors. And he's like, that Apple account was a huge deal for him and Paul Allen when they acquired it, because they had not figured out how licensing worked and all this stuff. So they were sort of making these bespoke versions of the thing that then later became DOS and Windows. And the Apple account was very pivotal to him when he first met Jobs and Wozniak, and they got to write that software for them. But yeah, so they had a long history with each other. And the back door, as you said, they would leave open, and Bill Gates would show up and just come in. They used to go on long walks together, but as his health was failing, he would come inside and sit by his bed, and they had these very long, deep conversations.
Yeah.
Say what you will about Bill Gates, a guy that I believe is somewhere on the spectrum, as we call it today.
He believes that.
And his parents, he has done a better job than I think most of learning how to see other people's emotions, and then going and having conversations. And maybe Melinda Gates would disagree, but he, taking the time to go and sit with Steve Jobs and go, okay, I did some stuff that I'm not proud of, but at the time made sense, and I'm just going to go and talk to my friend as a friend.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I sent you an article. I think maybe we'll talk about it next week. I just got done reading an article about him and his new book that's out. You can tell Bill Gates is really thinking about legacy. And the thing that I like about him also is he's able to go to Mar-a-Lago. Bill Maher is able to go to the White House and sit down with really one of the most powerful men in the world. And just because I'm showing up doesn't mean I endorse him. What I am doing, though, is I'm showing up and I'm having a conversation.
Have you ever done a commencement speech? When we were on the Ron and Don show in Cairo, I got invited to do a high school commencement speech. And as someone that talks for a living, I was incredibly nervous, like Steve Jobs says about this Stanford speech.
Yeah.
I was very nervous to do that speech because, and I remember getting up, A, you're behind a podium, B, the audience you're there for was not our audience.
Right.
Like a bunch of 17-year-olds were not P1s of the Ron and Don show. Their parents knew who I was, but the kids didn't. And it was very nerve-wracking. And I tried to keep it short and tight, because I knew that they didn't give a rat's ass who I was or what I had to say. But have you done a commencement speech?
I haven't, but what I was really great training for radio and even our podcast today was speaking in church or speaking in youth diagnostic development centers. Those are kids that are first and second time offenders and they live in a particular home. If you can go in and connect with those kids and you can connect with your peers, like when you're in high school and you can connect with other high school kids, that's one of the hardest things to do. And if you can do that, if you can communicate in that fashion, you can probably be a pretty good public speaker and then also maybe a good podcaster, broadcaster, or it helps with TV as well.
It's difficult to do these speeches. I went to the UW graduation here a week or so ago, and it's an okay speech, but like you're like, oh, there's 60,000 people here. Like get on with it, man.
Let's get it going.
Get on with it.
Speaking of getting going, we got to get on out of here, don't we, you guys? Yeah, we sure do. Matt wants to go. He wants to go over to Giddy Up Burger across the street. Have you had one of those yet? Yeah. Giddy Up?
Yeah.
Man, I've been thinking here the whole time as I'm sitting here, I wish I had a Giddy Up. And I've only eaten there one time, and it was with Ron a couple weeks ago.
Smash burger. We both got the same smash burger.
I've just been thinking about it the whole time I'm sitting. Do you smell the Giddy Up? Is it?
You should go.
Is there Giddy Up?
You deserve a Giddy Up.
I think I'm going to go get a Giddy Up. Yeah. Anyway. Hey, you guys, thanks for listening to this episode of the Ron and Don Show. And thanks you for allowing us to be your broadcasters, your friends, and your real estate brokers. If you need us, just reach out. And don't forget, a great time to buy real estate is in the middle of summer, and another great time to buy real estate, and it's just around the corner. You get on the other side of Halloween, between Halloween and really the first part of the year. That is the golden time. If people are selling real estate then when the sun is going down at 2:30 because it's so dark around here, it seems like it actually has been down for the past 24 hours. That's when you go out and pounce and you buy real estate.
Yeah, let's do a Ron and Don sit down, put a game plan together for you. It's ronandonsitdown.com. You can email me directly for one of our buyer's guides or players. What am I trying to say? Buyers or sellers playbooks at ronandon.com.
Yeah. Thanks to Matt today. Thanks to Grace, my son. Also, Charlie the dog is the executive producer. He's Ron. I'm Don. Until next time, you keep your head up and your shoulders back. And don't forget, you've been listening to the Ron and Don Show all night.
Say it.
On the Ron and Don Radio Network.
He said it.
Thanks for listening to the Ron and Don Show. Please hit subscribe.